Okay, today is Judges chapter 9. So we're going to continue on with this story, understanding that, remember, Abimelech, Gideon's son by a concubine, so not an official wife, but another woman, is asked to be king. So this is what we're going to get into today, is more about this story, chapter 9. So Gideon's son Abimelech is made king, which Abimelech means son of the king, or his dad is the king, basically. He slays his 70 brothers. Jotham tells a fable of trees choosing a king. The Shechemites conspire against Abimelech. He is slain at Thebes. So we're going to get into this now. This chapter is a really interesting one because this is one of the only parables found in the Old Testament, is this chapter. So this is, in a way, the first parable that is given that we have in the Old Testament today. There's probably more, but we don't really have a lot of those, unfortunately, in our current Bible. But let's get in verse 1. And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, which remember was the nickname that Gideon's dad gave him, he went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So Abimelech is asking them a question about government. Should all of us rule equally, or should one of us rule over everybody else? Is, in essence, what he's trying to get at, basically. And reminding them that while I am, the son of a concubine, I'm still your brother. I'm a half-brother, basically, but we all share the same father. So we're still kin. Verse 3, and his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-bereth. Remember, that's the god that they are worshiping. They went back to idol worship. Wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him. So these are, it says in the Hebrew version, empty and reckless, or idle and violent. So they're hired thugs. They sit around all day waiting for someone to pay them to kill somebody else or beat somebody else up, basically. So it's a hired thugs. Verse 5, and he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. So here's something that's important, okay? So he went to Shechem. Let me clarify this a little bit. I'm trying to make sure I get this clear in my mind too. He went to Shechem to his mother's brethren. So it's his mom's side of the family, basically, and communed with them and said, how should we run this? Because Gideon didn't want it, and most of his sons weren't willing to be king. They kind of had this idea that there should be a reign of judges, if you will, or like an equal say, that there should be somebody from each tribe that comes together and they form a unified body that makes decisions together. And so he's asking them, should we let everybody decide, or should we decide? Should everybody follow behind me? So he's rallied his mom's side of the family to help him out, basically. And then they gave him money, and he used that to hire thugs to go to his dad's side of the family and kill them at Ophrah. So he went in and destroyed them, which are the people who would, because Gideon was given the right to be king. And while we don't know for sure if he was king, his son's name means son of the king. So maybe Gideon did become king later, when he had that period where he kind of fell after he gathered up the earrings, maybe, and he made that ephod, if you remember, that maybe he was kind of making himself greater than he should have. Pride got to him, like it did with King David and many others, and he put himself up as king, possibly. Maybe that's there. We just don't have any corroborating evidence of that at this time. If you know of anything from other apocryphal or antiquities writings, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. So he basically wiped out all the sons of Jerubbaal, or Gideon, basically wiped them all out, thinking, I'm the only son left, therefore I'm the only one that has right to rule, basically. Even though they're not Judah. Judah was given the right to rule. That was an important part of the patriarchal blessing, was Judah has the right to rule, but now this person who's in Ephraim is trying to rule. So verse 6, and all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. So they're out in their town, their area, part of the promised land. They made him king. So this is, in Book of Mormon terms, you could say these are the king men. These are the people that are trying to change how the government works, to put a king into power. They're rallying behind one person who wants to have ultimate power, basically. And anytime you have, even in today's world, if you have a political movement that is rallying around one person to gain power, that's a bad sign. Okay, that is a bad sign. And yes, that's basically how presidential races run, but that is something we should be worried about. We shouldn't be electing a president because of the president, because of who that person is or the power that they will yield in single-handedly for us. It should be about what they can do to work with Congress, basically, for the rest of government. So verse 7, when they told it to Jotham, so remember, Jotham was the youngest of all these brothers. He was there, but he hid himself, and so he escaped the death. So he got out of there. He fled, got out of there. And when they told it to Jotham, so he's left. There's people who know where Jotham is. They're hiding him, keeping him secret. They went to him and said, dude, your brother, your half-brother, just made himself king. The people around him, his family, the people in his area, they have appointed him king, so he's going to come in and try to rule all of Israel as king. And so this is what Jotham did. He said, he went and stood up in the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice and cried, and said unto them, hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. Now, just as a pause here for just a second, okay, if Mount Gerizim sounds familiar, it's because it should sound familiar. So if you remember, one of the first things that Joshua was commanded by Moses to do when Israel crossed the River Jordan into the promised land, on top of building an altar, worshiping, giving thanks to God, those kinds of things, was he was to have a representative of each of the 12 tribes come up. If I remember right, half of them went to stand on one mountain, and the other half went to stand on the other mountain. So there's these two mountains with a nice long valley between them. So they had half on one, half on the other, as Israel went through the middle. The half on one side, Mount Horeb, I think is what it was. I'd have to look it up. It's the beginning of the book of Joshua. I believe it was Mount Horeb or something like that. They pronounced cursings on Israel. The other half pronounced on Gerizim, pronounced blessings on Israel. If I remember correctly, that's how it went. So half did cursings, other half did blessings. I think Gerizim was the blessing on Israel. And so there's history behind these and significance around these, because that was about helping them understand, if you choose to do good, you'll be blessed. If you choose to do bad, you're going to be cursed. They were unequivocally pointing out the right of agency that Israel had to make choices, and made it very clear what the results of those choices would be, basically, is all that was an exercise of, more of a symbolic understanding. So Jotham goes to Mount Gerizim and is yelling out this parable, basically. He says here, the trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. So trees are representing the people. And they said unto the olive tree, reign thou over us. So the olive tree is, I believe that actually is Gideon in this. So, but the olive tree said unto them, should I leave my fatness wherewith by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? And the tree said to the fig tree, so he basically turned them down. So then they went to the fig tree, come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, should I forsake my sweetness, my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees? So the fig trees, which is Gideon's sons, said no as well. We shouldn't be promoted over the trees, basically talking about how they wanted to do an equality type thing, more of a judges, like a representative government, rather than have one person run everything, have a representation of each of the tribes come together to collectively run things. Verse 12, then said the trees unto the vine, basically, come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man, and go be promoted over the trees? So again, this is another one going, why I shouldn't be promoted over the trees. So this is part of Gideon's children that they're asking to be kings, and they're denying him. Not unlike King Mosiah in the Book of Mormon, in fact. Verse 14, then all the trees said unto the bramble. So a bramble is like your blackberries, boysenberries, raspberries. They're really tall, skinny branches coming out of the ground, basically with lots of leaves and the fruit on them and things. A lot of thorns are coming on them. There are some thornless versions, but a lot of them have thorns. And so they went to the bramble. Okay, so this is kind of like, if you're thinking about this, from olive tree, has olives and oils and very important things, a high value bush, to fig, which is food. The fig is food. To the vine, which is your drink, your wine, your grape juices. So lots of valuable resources and things and value for the people. And they went to the bramble, which is the thorny, kind of annoying bush. It's not as valuable as all the rest of them, basically. And they're asking the bramble, which is Abimelech, come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, if in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, so he said yes, basically. And if it's not true, then may fire destroy everybody, basically. So it was true. So he said yes. Verse 16, now therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely, in that ye have made Abimelech king, and if ye have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you and adventured his life far and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. So Jotham's reminding them, if you've done this and dealt fair with my dad's family, that'd be one thing, because my dad spent his life helping save your life, basically. He got us out from the Midianites, remember, and the Canaanites and things as well. Verse 18, and ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons, 70 persons upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If ye then have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem, the house of Milo, and the house of Milo, and let fire come out from the men of Shechem, and from the house of Milo, and devour Abimelech. So he's saying, basically, if you've done righteously, then Abimelech might be a good man to have as your king. If you haven't done righteously, then may you all die in fire. Basically, you kind of turn on each other and consume each other. And verse 21, and Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech, his brother. So he gets up on Mount Gerizim, prophesies this, uses this parable to prophesy to Israel, and then gets out of there before Abimelech can rally some troops to go after him. Now, verse 22, when Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel, so 3 years Abimelech has been the king in Israel, basically, then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. Now, again, we hear this a lot, where there's a lot of things in the Old Testament that say that God caused this person to be evil. And I think, again, it's part of this trend, this idea that some of the scribes most likely had in the ancient days, that attributed evil to God, or that God was in control of everything. And so whenever something bad happened, God was in control of it. So he made that bad thing happen. They take away, unfortunately, agency. So just like in the other times, it's not that, like in the stories of Pharaoh, In the Bible, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. But why would he harden Pharaoh's heart? That doesn't make any sense. So Joseph Smith helped fix a couple of those sentences to realize it wasn't God, it was Pharaoh. God gave Pharaoh a choice, and Pharaoh chose to harden his heart and go the wrong way. So in verse 23, it's not necessarily that God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, but what probably really happened was, again, people who want power and authority tend to hate people who want power and authority. They don't like each other. They repel each other, but they learn they have to work together, not because they like each other, but because that's how you get ahead. You like them and hate them at the same time and have to keep a kind of uneasy truce between each other. And so the problem is Abimelech was probably getting a little too powerful, and Shechem, the men of Shechem, was probably like, this guy's got to go. We liked him, we backed him, we helped him, but he's not bailing us out. He's not helping us. So we're going to bail on him, basically, and put somebody else in his place. So they started to deal treacherously with him. So they were not kind to him. They were not supporting his policies, his ideas, and probably conspiring in the background to assassinate Abimelech. So verse 24, that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in the killing of his brethren. And the men of Shechem set liers in wait for him in the top of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along that way by them, and it was told Abimelech. So they put thieves basically up in the mountains, and they would come down and rob the people basically as they went through. And then this was told to Abimelech. This is what was going on. So verse 26, and Gal, the son of Ebed, came with his brethren and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. So this guy goes over and says, okay, what's going on? I need to help you out. Verse 27, and so the Shechem is now backing a new person. They've abandoned Abimelech, and now they're backing a new person, this Gal or Gaul. Verse 27, and they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards and trode the grapes and made merry and went into the house of their God and did eat and drink and cursed Abimelech. So they partied, they drank grape juices and probably some wines that they had, as the fermented aged grape juice would be. They went into the house of their God, they ate and they drank, performed their oblations, and then they cursed Abimelech. They got their god, Bel-Berith, to curse Abimelech, basically, to go after him. Verse 28, and Gal, or Gaul, the son of Ebed, said, who is Abimelech and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is not he the son of Jerubbaal, and Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for why should we serve him? So now Gal is getting everybody to go in a different direction, basically, of let's not follow Abimelech, let's follow somebody else. So again, this is the problem with power, is if you don't help those who helped you, you get tossed to the side and they go somewhere else. There's this weird, uncomfortable dynamic that happens with people in power. We see this all the time in politics today. And it's a good sign when this happens. That's not the politician you want to be voting for, honestly, because there's too much underhandedness, backroom dealing going on. Let's see. And verse 29, and would to God this people were under my hand. Then would I remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, increase thine army and come out. So he's calling Abimelech out here, basically. Verse 30, when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. So again, now Zebul and Abimelech are going to see this guy is challenging our power and our authority. We got to stomp him out before this goes too far so that we can maintain our power and authority. Our friends who helped us have turned against us. Let's see. Verse 31, and he sent messengers unto Abimelech privately basically, saying, behold, Gal the son of Ebed and his brethren be come to Shechem, and behold, they fortify the city against thee. So Shechem's basically saying, we're out, we're leaving the union, we're leaving Israel, we're going to get our own king, and we're going to secede, we're going to move out on our own. 32, now therefore up by night, thou and the people that is with thee, and lie in wait in the field. So Zebul, who's the assistant or officer of Abimelech, is saying, let's ambush them. Let's get our army out there. Let's sneak out and let's ambush these people. Verse 33, and it shall be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, thou shalt rise early and set upon the city. And behold, when he and all the people that is with him come out against thee, then mayest thou do to them as thou shalt find occasion. So Zebul saying, ambush them, sneak out there, get your army in place at night. Then in the morning, just as the sun rises, so they're caught off guard. They're just waking up. They're not ready for a fight yet. You can attack them and hit them, and you can take them down, basically. Probably, too, when a lot of these cities, they would close their gates at night, and then you would have to knock on the gates to get let in or out during the night. But in the morning, sometimes they'd open them up to encourage that commerce, that flow of people. So that was that opportunity to sneak in and get into the cities. So verse 34, and Abimelech rose up, and all the people that were with him by night, and they laid wait against Shechem in 4 companies. So they broke into 4 groups to do this. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entering of the gate of the city. And Abimelech rose up, and the people that were with him, from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, behold, there come people down from the top of the mountains. And Zebul said unto him, thou seest the shadow of the mountains as if they were men. So Zebul is apparently talking to Gaal. Zebul's there. So Zebul might actually be playing both sides, basically. And Gaal's like, there's people coming down on us. And Zebul's like, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. He's trying to catch him off guard. Verse 37, and Gaal spake again, saying, see, there come people down by the middle of the land, and another company come along by the plain of Meonium. I don't know if I said that right or not, but that's as good as it gets. Or the oak of the diviners is the Hebrew interpretation of that, according to the footnotes. So verse 38, then said Zebul to him, where is now thy mouth, wherewith thou sayest, who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Is not this the people that thou hast despised? Go out, I pray now, and fight with them. So Zebul is finally admitting there is an army coming, and he's basically saying, look, this is Abimelech, and who are you to say you should fight Abimelech? Abimelech's coming to fight you. You need to get your men and go fight him. Let's see who wins. Verse 39, and Gaal went out before the men of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him and fled before him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded, even unto the entering of the gate. So Abimelech is getting into the town through the gates, basically. Gaal is fleeing, getting out of there. He's losing. And verse 41, and Abimelech dwelt at Arumah, and Zebul thrust out Gaal and his brethren that they should not dwell in Shechem. So Zebul kicks him out as well, forces him out from the inside. Verse 42, and it came to pass on the morrow that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. So some of the people went out and told him what was going on. Verse 43, and he took the people and divided them into 3 companies and laid wait in the field, and looked, and behold, the people were come forth out of the city, and he rose up against them and smote them. And Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, and the 2 other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and slew them. So part of the army were able to get into the access to the city. The other part finished sweeping up everybody else that was outside the city. Verse 45, and Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he took the city, and slew the people that was therein, and beat down the city, and sowed it with salt, or covered it with the soil with salt, supposed to ensure desolation. And what happens if you put too much salt in the soil? Nothing grows. It changes the pH balance of your soil, and nothing will grow there. So he's destroying the city in more than one way. Verse 46, and when all the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered into an hold of the house of the god Berith. Remember, Baal Berith is their god. And it was told Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. So Abimelech has taken the city. Gaal and his forces that are loyal to him are now holed up in a tower, and they're surrounded. Verse 48, and Abimelech gat him up to Mount Zalmon, and he and all the people that were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand, and cut down a bough of the trees, and took it and laid it on his shoulder, and said unto the people that were with him, what have ye seen me do? Make haste and do as I have done. Meaning, go cut more trees down. Verse 49, and all the people likewise cut down every man his bow and followed Abimelech and put them to the hold and set the hold on fire upon them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women. So they're holed up. Abimelech goes down, cuts down a bunch of trees, gets a bunch of people to cut them down. They lay them at the base of the tower. They light it on fire, and they basically burn to death everybody in the tower. They get the tower on fire. The tower heats up. Everybody's inside. They burn. They die. They cook. They're dead. There was 1,000 men and women who were in that tower. It's a heck of a big tower, big fortified area where they were at. And so they were destroyed by fire. And if you remember the prophecy, fire would come out from Abimelech and destroy the people of the men of Shechem. So now the other side of this is the men of Shechem bring out fire to burn Abimelech. That's the next phase of Jotham's parable and prophecy. So verse 50, then went Abimelech to Thebes and encamped against Thebes and took it. Now I'm not sure on verse 50. I don't see any footnotes on that one. I don't think this Thebes is the Egyptian Thebes. I think this is a different town that's nearby called Thebes. I don't think this is necessarily the Egyptian Thebes. I could be wrong, and if you have information or evidence to show that, then put it in the notes. We'd love to get those links. But I'm pretty sure this Thebes is not the one that's in Egypt, but a different one. So they went and got Thebes now. So this is the second town, basically, as well, Shechem and Thebes. 51, but there was a strong tower within the city, and thither fled all the men and women and all they of the city, and shut it to them, and get them up to the top of the tower. So again, this tower. It's a heavily fortified part of the city, and people are fleeing in there to protect themselves because it's going to make it hard for the army to go after them. This is kind of like their safe room, basically, where they can run to be safe from the invading marauders. Relatively safe, I should say. Verse 52, and Abimelech came unto the tower and fought against it and went hard unto the door of the tower to burn it with fire. So they couldn't get in, so they burned the tower, the wall. The door was hard, it was wood, so they basically put fire to it to burn it out and weaken that wood. Verse 53, and a certain woman cast a piece of a millstone upon Abimelech's head, and all to break his skull. So probably up higher in one of the windows of this tower, a woman has a piece of a millstone. These millstones were huge, and they weighed a lot. So this is a part of a millstone. So she's probably having a little bit of a hard time moving the millstone around, but it's a good, substantial piece. She gets it, and it's probably close to the window anyways. She brings it over, gets it there, pops that sucker out of the window, and it falls and whacks Abimelech. Probably fractures his skull on impact, and just kills him, just wipes him out, basically smashes his head. Verse 54, then he called hastily unto the young man his armor bearer and said unto him, draw thy sword and slay me, that men say not of me, a woman slew him. So he didn't die immediately from the rock hitting, but he realized he's not going to survive those wounds, basically. His skull's broken. He's probably getting hemorrhaging in the brain. Other problems are happening, and he knows he's on his way out. So he doesn't want to be known that a woman killed him, so he has his armor bearer stab him so that he can have a more honorable death, basically. And the young man thrust him through, and he died. Verse 55, when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed every man unto his place. Thus God rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did unto his father, in slaying his 70 brethren. And all the evil of the men of Shechem did God render upon their heads, and upon them that came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. So they all got their just dues for what they had, okay? That's, karma comes around, and they all died. They all were wiped out. When they wiped out, what happened? Well, everybody went back to their normal life. They didn't get involved in these rallies and pushing behind people and having this power and this authority. They went, whatever, I'm going back to my normal life. What's the point of all this? I don't need to worry about this. This isn't going to affect my home life. Let me just go home and take care of my crops and my animals and my family and not worry about this stuff. So the wicked take care of the wicked. This is, I think, a good, important point for us to always remember. It's usually not the righteous that take out the wicked. It's the wicked that take out the wicked most of the time. Okay, the righteous defend themselves from the wicked, and we see this all the time, but the righteous aren't attacking the wicked. They're defending, the wicked are attacking. But it's wicked that destroys wicked. God uses the wicked people to destroy other wicked people all the time, and this is no exception. So even in the Book of Mormon, we see this. So just realize if you ever hear of a group who wants to fight against, who thinks they have to defend their rights and fight against other people and be proactive on that, the righteous just defend. They don't attack. Wicked defeats wicked is usually what it comes down to. So this is what's happening here. They're gone. Now let's see, what are they going to do about a king or the future of Israel in the next chapter?